Italian invasion of Greece, Mussolini's disaster. World War II. It was supposed to be Mussolini's moment. October 1940. Italy, fresh off its conquests in Ethiopia and Albania, was ready to show the world it could play empire just like Hitler. The target? Greece, a mountainous, divided nation with outdated weapons and barely enough boots to go around. So why did this easy win turn into a frozen fiasco? How did a single Greek battalion stop an entire Italian division at Hill 731? What made Mussolini think invading in winter through the Pindus Mountains was a good idea? From torpedoed cruisers during religious festivals to propaganda so fiery it turned sailors into saints, this is the story of how Greece turned the tables, and how Italy's military unraveled faster than a toga in a windstorm. British intelligence cracked Italian codes. The RAF rained down from Crete. Italian generals sabotaged each other more than the enemy. And through it all, the Greek people, divided politically but united in spirit, fought like lions. This isn't just a war story. It's a cautionary tale of arrogance, terrain, and the power of national resolve. So if you think you know World War II, think again. Because Mussolini's disaster in Greece is the campaign that changed everything and almost derailed Hitler's plans for Russia. It's October 1940. Benito Mussolini, Italy's self-styled taser, is feeling left out. Hitler's blitzkrieg has steamrolled Poland, France, and the Low Countries. Meanwhile, Mussolini's war resume includes a few dusty villages in Ethiopia, a slice of Albania, and a half-hearted jab at southern France. Not exactly the stuff of empire. So what does Ildusha do? He decides to invade Greece, a neutral country with a modest army and a mountainous terrain that laughs in the face of tanks. Mussolini doesn't consult Hitler. He doesn't wait for proper planning. He simply orders Pietro Badoglio, his chief of general staff, to prepare for an invasion using Albania as a launchpad. The date? October 28, 1940, a day that would become Ohi Day in Greece, meaning no day, commemorating their refusal to surrender. Italy's plan was as bold as it was bonkers. Send 2 divisions through the Pindus Mountains, crush Greek resistance, and march triumphantly into Athens. Mussolini expected victory in 2 weeks. He even penciled in a celebratory dinner. But from the moment Italian boots hit the mud, things went sideways. The Pindus Mountains weren't just steep, they were a logistical nightmare. Roads were barely passable, pack animals froze to death, and Italian supply lines collapsed like a house of cards in a snowstorm. Within 11 days, the Greeks had stopped the Italian advance cold. By November 14th, they weren't just defending, they were counterattacking. Greek forces pushed the Italians back to the Albanian border and then kept going. In some places, they penetrated 50 kilometers into Albania. This wasn't just a tactical win, it was a humiliation. Italian troops panicked, their lines shattered. Their tanks, designed for desert warfare, were useless in the icy mountains. Their air force, once feared in Spain, couldn't handle the terrain or the weather. Let's set the stage. It's late 1940. Mussolini, ever the theatrical dictator, is watching Hitler gobble up Europe like a bratwurst buffet. Mussolini, not to be outdone, decides it's time for Italy to flex its imperial muscles. His target? Greece, a mountainous, stubborn, and fiercely independent country. He orders his chief of staff, Pietro Badoglio, to prepare for an invasion from Albania, which Italy had annexed earlier. The plan? March through the Pindus Mountains, crush Greek resistance, and bask in Mediterranean glory. Spoiler, it didn't go well. Now, Mussolini had reason to be confident. After all, Italy's air force had performed well in the Spanish Civil War, bombing Republican positions and terrorizing civilians with impunity. But what worked in Spain didn't translate to Greece. Enter the British Royal Air Force, stage left. From their base on Crete, the RAF launched sorties into Greek airspace, defending it with a vengeance. Italian pilots, used to uncontested skies, suddenly found themselves dodging Spitfires and Hurricanes like pigeons in Trafalgar Square. The RAF not outflew them, they outclassed them. And while Italy was still using tactics from the Spanish playbook, Britain had upgraded to a whole new chapter. But the RAF wasn't just dropping bombs. They were dropping knowledge. Thanks to British cryptographers cracking Italian military encryption protocols, the Allies had a front-row seat to Mussolini's plans. They knew troop movements, strategic objectives, and even which general was throwing a tantrum that week. This intelligence was fed directly to the Greeks, allowing them to anticipate attacks, reinforce vulnerable positions, and launch counteroffensives with surgical precision. It was like playing chess with your opponent's playbook open on the table. Now let's talk about the real enemy of the Italian army, itself. The Italian military establishment was a tangled mess of mistrust, ego, and petty feuds. Generals were more interested in humiliating each other than defeating the Greeks. One branch wouldn't cooperate with another out of fear that it might lose political clout. The Navy didn't talk to the Army. The Air Force didn't talk to anyone. And all of this was happening in a country that was still largely agrarian, with limited industrial capacity and no vast territories to plunder like Germany. Resources were scarce. Coordination was non-existent. And the idea of combined arms tactics, the kind Germany used so effectively in Poland and France, was treated like a foreign language. Italian generals, bless their hearts, were astonishingly resistant to change. When observers compiled a detailed report on German blitzkrieg tactics and handed it to Badoglio, he famously replied, "We'll study it when the war is over." That's like being handed the answers to the exam and saying, "I'll read them after I fail." One disgruntled Italian general summed it up best in his war diary. "Someone will say in 15 days we must be ready to march against Yugoslavia, or in 8 days we will attack Greece from Albania, as easily as saying, 'Let's have a cup of coffee.'" He went on to note that Mussolini had no understanding of terrain, climate, or logistics, and even less concern for the fact that Italy lacked weapons, ammunition, equipment, animals, and raw materials. Before the war, Greece was politically fractured like a dropped plate of baklava. Enter Ioannis Metaxas, a Great War veteran turned politician who looked at the rising tide of communism among Greek peasants and said, "Nope, not on my watch." Unfortunately, the Greek public responded with a collective shrug. So who gave him power? King George II, who appointed Metaxas as prime minister in 1936. And Metaxas, never one to let democracy get in the way of a good dictatorship, used the threat of a communist uprising to abolish parliament and crown himself the authoritarian boss of Greece. Now, Metaxas wasn't exactly beloved, but he had one superpower: propaganda. With total control over Greek media, he spun tales of Italian cowardice, incompetence, and general buffoonery so effectively that even the most skeptical Greek fishermen started sharpening his trident. Then came August 15, 1940, a date that would make Metaxas dance a jig in his jackboots. During a major religious festival honoring the Virgin Mary, an Italian submarine torpedoed the Greek light cruiser Ellie. The timing couldn't have been more dramatic if it had been scripted by Sophocles. The Greek public, deeply pious and already simmering with resentment, elevated the fallen crew to the status of religious martyrs. Metaxas didn't just seize the moment, he weaponized it. The propaganda machine roared to life, painting Italy as the villainous oppressor desecrating holy ground. By the time Italy declared war, Greece was already marching to battle hymns and waving icons like war flags. Now we arrive at the Battle of Hill 731, where Greek heroism reached mythic proportions. Picture this: an entire Italian division, backed by armored units, charging up a mountain pass. Waiting for them? A single Greek battalion. The Italians attacked again and again. The Greeks repelled them again and again. The hill was soaked in blood, sweat, and sheer stubbornness. It was Thermopylae 2.0, minus the Persian arrows and plus a lot more mud. Eventually, the Italians gave up. Their spring offensive was cancelled, and Mussolini presumably went off to sulk in a corner with a glass of Chianti and a bruised ego. Despite their stunning successes, the Greeks were fighting on borrowed time. By March 1941, their army was running on fumes. British aid helped, but it wasn't enough. They scavenged captured Italian equipment, but that was like trying to fuel a tank with olive oil. When the Germans invaded, the Greek army barely had enough ammunition for a month. A staggering 250,000 reservists never saw combat, not because they lacked courage, but because they lacked boots. Yes, boots. The kind you wear on your feet. That's how dire things were. As the mainland collapsed, the Greek government retreated to Crete, the island of myth and now the final battleground. British, Greek, and Anzac forces braced themselves for the largest airborne invasion in history. Over 20,000 German paratroopers descending like angry locusts. The defenders fought valiantly, but the odds were stacked like a rigged poker game. Hitler, ever the drama queen, later blamed the Greek and Yugoslav campaigns for delaying Operation Barbarossa, claiming, if the Italians hadn't attacked Greece and needed our help, the war would have taken a different course. Was he exaggerating? Probably. But the southern campaign did drain Axis resources, delay the invasion of the Soviet Union, and force Germany to clean up Mussolini's mess with a mop and a flamethrower. Even after Greece capitulated, its spirit didn't. Greek soldiers joined the British Army in North Africa, while civilians formed one of the most effective resistance movements of the entire war. They sabotaged railways, ambushed convoys, and made life miserable for the occupiers. The Italian invasion was doomed not just by poor planning and inter-service squabbling, but by the unyielding resolve of the Greek people. Their courage turned a footnote into a legend. Before you march off into history, if this story of Mussolini's mountain misadventure had you hooked, just wait till you see what's next. We've got more battles, blunders, and untold legends coming your way. And trust me, you don't want to miss them. So hit that subscribe button, tap the notification bell. Follow us for more gripping tales that textbooks forgot. Because every time we drop a new episode, it's not just history. It's a front row seat to the drama that shaped our world.